Hi there everyone. This tutorial will be about the 3D analytical site diagram, and we're going to be using Rhino to begin with and then move into Illustrator. You should already have from your Design Process 3 course the site modeled in Rhino as well as the surrounding buildings around our site, and you should also have the 3D model of the building itself from AML and ENV-3. So let's go to Rhino and take a look at how what we need to do to the Rhino model to create the diagrams. Okay, here in Rhino, one of the first things we want to do is make sure that we have a ground plane also. You should already have the building modeled, the existing building. You should already have the sidewalks and blocks, as well as the neighboring buildings modeled. And you should also have topography of the California incline, PCH, the beach, and even the ocean modeled. Now, these don't need to be very detailed because this is a diagram, again, where we're stripping back things to the essentials, simplifying things, clarifying things by getting rid of unnecessary details. But one of the first things we might need to do, because we will be in a 3D view with changes in elevation, is make sure we do have a ground plane. So all I have right now is the topography of the California incline. So what I'm going to do is make a polyline, and I'm just going to kind of square off this area here and make a polyline there, and then do a planar surface. Planar surface, and select that, whoops, those curves, hit enter, and now I've got a ground plane. Okay. The second thing you need to know is, or do in Rhino, is make sure you know which way is true north. Now in plan view, I have oriented my model, and I constructed this model orthogonal, with the streets orthogonal to the view. But I also have, I did that by creating an orthogonal C-plane. The actual world coordinates are still here. So I can rotate back to actual true north anytime I want, or back to my working C-plane here of orthogonal to the streets. If your world is orthogonal to the streets, you need to know which way is actually true north. You don't necessarily need to rotate your model, but you should at least know, and with, say, and note it on your in your model with, say, a line or something, you know, which way is actually true north. All right, so we know that that's north, because what we're going to do is construct solar arcs, and of course those are oriented to actual true north-south, east-west, cardinal directions. So we'll need to know that. So we're going to draw solar arcs that indicate the path of the sun through the sky, and we're going to draw 3 of them. One that represents both equinoxes, the vernal and the autumnal equinox, and then one for the winter solstice, one for the summer solstice. So we'll show 3 angles of a solar arc going across the sky. I'm in my plan view, oriented with north, or true north. And so what I'll just do is I'll draw an arc, center of arc here, and it can be any size right now, and it's going to be just a half circle there. Then let's go into 3D view and rotate, copy this arc into place, represent those 3 angles of the sun path through the sky. at the different times of year. Here I am, I'm looking from east to west, basically, at the solar arc, or the arc. So I'll select that, and I will rotate 3D. Rotate 3D. And with the axis of rotation there between the 2 points, and then we'll start flipping this up. And note that the angle to rotate this is positive, and that depends on which way you draw the rotation axis from. If I had picked the far point first, and then the second point of the axis is the closer point, then I'd have to go in the negative direction, enter in a negative angle this way. So the first angle I'm going to put in, I happen to know I've got my cheat sheet here, and it's got that the winter solstice is at 32.66 degrees above the horizon. That's where the arc of the sun goes for the winter solstice. So I'll go ahead and enter in 32.66. Enter. All right. So there's the first. This arc represents the arc of the sun through the sky in the winter solstice, from east going to noon, and then into the west for sunset. Let's do the next one. Rotate 3D. I just hit space, get that going. This is my axis. I'll flip it up this way. Again, positive angular direction because of the way I drew the axis. And the equinox is at 54.56. So we'll do that. All right, so there's the equinox arc, and then the final one. Rotate 3D. Here, this is our axis of rotation. Go in the positive direction. And 75.21. Now, it's not entirely important to get these accurate angles in there, because again, this is a diagram, and we're not going to be projecting the sun. We're not going to actually put a light on the solar arc that we've drawn and project a rendering light to create shadows. Although we could, it's certainly possible we could, but it's again just a representation of an idea, of a concept that we are studying the three angles of the sun as it goes through the sky, and that the three angles represent certain specific times of year. All right, so, and I did 3D rotate with the copy. And let's go back to the Google satellite view and identify which directions the views really are, so we understand that. So we'll go back to the web browser, and here's the site, 849 Ocean. Now let's zoom out a little bit and let's see what the good views are. Of course, one view is going to be straight out into the ocean. And what else will we have? When you're here on the beach in Santa Monica, another great view is often sort of up the coast, so maybe sort of a westerly or west-northwest direction is usually pretty good. Also, straight north to the Santa Monica Mountains could be a nice view. It's probably going to be hard to see anything, any decent views off to the east. And viewing down to the southeast, we could probably see the pier, the Santa Monica Pier. That's an attraction that we'll probably be able to see. So we've got views in, say, the sort of the southerly or southeast direction, down in the straight out to the ocean in the southwest direction, and probably westerly, northwesterly directions. Okay, so then we go back to Rhino, and the way that we do this is create a pyramid or a view cone using a pyramid, and as our sort of a prop that we will bring into Illustrator and be able to paste an image on there. So what I'm going to do is the pyramid command. Okay, and change the number of sides, first of all, to 4. If you're not 4, change it to 4. So it's going to represent basically like a widescreen, or maybe not just widescreen, but a view, a rectangular view, an image that we see. And so I'll just create a pyramid like this, and I think we can adjust the size of it, or the depth of it, as we go along. But let's change this sort of the aspect ratio, because the square base here is going to turn into the representation of the image that we see. And I think, we want something that's more of a landscape or a letterbox kind of a view. So I'm just going to kind of squish this. I think that what you want to do is actually try and achieve something like a 16:9, which is a widescreen theatrical aspect ratio, if you can. And then we'll rotate this also in 3D. Here, there, and flip that up 90 degrees. There. So what we have there, if we look here, is basically a view cone, right? And what we can do is put that near our site. And I'm going to do that. Let's put that near our site. And also put it, match the height of the building. So align basically with the center line of the building. And then let's rotate it so that it's looking the proper direction out into the ocean. And then we'll move this sort of into place there, like that. So here we've got something that's indicating which way our one of our preferred views is. And what we can do is we can rotate copy this for the other views as well. So let's do that. In plan, we want one that's kind of looking this way. So I'll rotate this, use the copy option. Let's just go ahead and click out in space, and it'll be something like about that angle. Whoops, I did a few too many. All right, so one will be looking out that way, and then one looking down sort of the other way toward the pier. So maybe something like that. Oops, I keep doing it. And move that one into place. I don't want to snap. All right. Okay. So there we've got some, I want to call it a prop that we can place an image onto the end of the cone there, the base of the cone, indicating what the view is. All right, so we've got solar arc and we've got the view cones here. So I'm going to select the solar arcs and select the solar arcs and turn those off, the view cones and the solar arcs. I'll put the view cones up near the top of my list here too, the sort of additive elements. All right, so then now what we can do is pick the view. But one of the most important things that we need to do is in the view to set it to parallel projection. All right, so not perspective. So we want to set it to parallel. Okay, so that makes it basically like an axonometric, or like a true axonometric or isometric drawing, architectural drawing, and where the verticals are vertical, and all of the lateral angles in plan are all parallel also. All right, so we want to choose a view in parallel projection. And again, it's a little hard to find what might be the best given the solar angle, but I think maybe something like this. All right, and let's zoom in so that we capture, and I'll make the viewport fill the screen. Let's zoom in so that we capture enough of the context in the buildings. Okay, because that's going to be, we need that to help inform what our diagram is and what some of the influences and what some of the things that are affecting our site, which is the immediate context of the neighboring buildings. So maybe something like this could be good. And so what I'll do is I'll open up my named views palette. I think it's type named view, enter, and here it is. And what I will do is I'll save this view here. Again, we're in parallel projection. I've kind of picked the angle that we want. And so I'll add, and I'll call this our 3D analytical. All right. Apply. So here's our 3D analytical view. If I get out of that and go into perspective and move it around, all I have to do is go back to, oops, where is it? You can go away. I'll just type name view, name view, double click that, and boom, brings this viewport back to our 3D analytical view. Okay. One of the important things about our site, of course, is also that it is so high in elevation above the beach and the ocean, that there's the California incline here that really contributes to the experience of the site and the surroundings. And what we can do is I'll open up the quad view here, and right, so that we are square to the site in our views. And down here on the right side, I'll put in a clipping plane. I'll do that. And let's go back here to our 3D analytical. And I want to, let's go into a perspective view here again, just to be able to move things around. And we need to make sure that the clipping plane is on in the 3D analytical view that we have. So here, make sure that that's checked in this view, this model view, and we can move that also sort of into place. If we just make sure that the viewport here is the view we want, and now we can move the clipping plane sort of into place and capture, make sure that we've got enough of the context in the neighboring buildings, but also place our clipping plane where it indicates where the topography change is. So maybe something around here will do, and maybe, yeah. So we can see the beach, and we can see the California incline, we can see the PCH as it relates to those two in between, and then Ocean Ave, and our site on all the different elevations, all right? So there's that, and now what we can do is, we go back here, whoops, I keep forgetting I guess we need to keep that on. We can hide this. The clipping plane itself will hide that, and make a 2D on our view here. So I'll select everything, and you can see I don't have the view cones or the solar arcs on, and that is because we can, since we're in a parallel projection here, we can export those independently, and they'll still be as long as we have this angle of view saved, they will still be in the proper orientation, and we can scale them and move them around in Illustrator to put them where we want, color them independently, etc. So we don't need to actually export them along with everything else here. So we can do it as sort of like an overlay of information separately. So let's do the Make 2D here on this. Let's see. Again, select everything. Make 2D. Enter. And one of the important things we want to change here in this dialog for the Make 2D is, first of all, we do not want the hidden lines. All right, so we don't want the hidden lines that are going to kind of interfere with everything. All right, you can change the layer name and put it on whatever layer name you want, but we go ahead and apply, and it is, the Make 2D is working. Let's do its thing, and then here, and we can go ahead and export this. So we do File, Export Selected, and we'll put this under 3D analysis here, and we'll say save it as an Illustrator file. You can see that Rhino will export a native Adobe Illustrator. That's what we want. So we can just make 2D and export these independently, and they'll still come in, because we're in parallel projection, they'll come into Illustrator in this orientation, and we can manipulate them with scale and color, manipulate them independently from the base drawing. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to move these out of the way of each other in this view so that they're not blocking one another. So we can export all three at the same time, but they come in as sort of like independent view cones that we can, if we wanted to, we can put them back into place like this in Illustrator. All right, so in this case, now when I do the Make 2D, I'll select everything here, the solar arc and the view cones. We do want to have the hidden lines. And Make 2D, there we go. So we do want to have the hidden lines out now this time. Hidden lines, we'll apply. Let's check the top view, where they are. Our Make 2D has come in as individual individual Illustrator paths. Okay, so these are all just lines, right? There are no fills or anything, but it's very easy for us now to start coloring things in. There's a tool called the Shape Builder tool that we'll use to do that. But first things first, let's make this, let's go ahead and make our diagram here kind of fill the page. I'll select everything and zoom out a little bit. Grab one of these handles, I'll hold down Shift, and just, make it big enough to fill the page. All right, maybe even more, because we don't need a lot of the extra stuff on the outside there. Even more. All right. And it could be even more, but in Illustrator, since we're vector based here, we can always come back and resize things the same way as we just did. And we could do even more here. How about pulling it that way? So here we'll have a little bit of we've got the context here, we've got the ocean, the beach, the highway. It may be that we don't even need to have the ocean here. There could be ways that we indicate the proximity of the ocean diagrammatically with annotations that we have here. All right. So then the reason why we did the parallel projection instead of a perspective now is if we go to our view cones and solar arcs, I can bring those in. And so I can copy and paste, copy, come into this file, paste them, and you can see, again, we can resize and manipulate these things kind of independently and still move them around. I can select, say, just that one and not that, and group those, right? Control G or Command G, and now I can place this independently, this one here, group that so they're all together, and grab that, and I can place it independently. This one will group that too, and then that one as well. And we can manipulate them if they are overlapping like that. We can manipulate them so that they either obscure each other or they don't. Right? And we can scale them independently too. But because we're in parallel projection, they retain the proper orientation. Right? So for example, if this one for some reason I want it to be smaller, I can just resize that. If I want this one to be smaller because maybe it's kind of obscuring, it's in the front and it's obscuring the view, I can do that, and it retains the view angle. Okay. What we will do though is we need to isolate them. So let's put them on their own layer. So we'll go to the Layers palette, select them, go to the Layers palette, create new layer, and we'll name this the view cones. All right, and we do the same thing with the solar arcs. We'll copy that, come back here, paste, and they're in the proper orientation. So we can make this, before we go any further, actually before we make anything, we'll make a new layer for that, and we'll call that the solar arcs. I can lock everything else except the solar arcs, so now I can be a little bit messy, and I failed to actually put them on that layer, so I've got to select them again. Select, 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 and now make sure I drag this dot onto the solar arcs layer, and we can check it by turning it off. Yeah, so I put them on the proper layer, and let's make sure I did that with these as well. I did not. Select those, drag this icon to put them onto the view cones layer. Yes, they are on the view cones layer, so I can manipulate those independently. All right, so I'll lock everything except the solar arcs, and so just like the view cones, just like the view cones, I mean, I could group them, and maybe we'll group them. I can rescale these independently, but they keep the proper orientation with everything else. I have the view cones and solar arcs layers turned off, and I have the section cut and base drawing layers renamed and organized. So now what I can do is I can begin to start filling in some of these planes, and Illustrator has a really great tool to do that. And we'll just demonstrate a little up here in this region. We can do this. We can, whatever we select a whole bunch of objects here, and we use Shift-M to go to the Shape Builder tool. These items and paths that we've selected will now be identified by Illustrator's Shape Builder tool, if it can. Right, this one it doesn't, but because there might be some errors in the Make 2D, you can see when I mouse over things, it starts detecting enclosed areas. Before we start creating those, let's select some colors, and maybe we'll pick sort of a mint green here just to start. And we can just click and assign some of the roofs that color. And you can see here, because of the Make 2D didn't kind of do what we wanted, or maybe this was constructed incorrectly in Rhino, I can drag across that path, and it joins those two areas together. And same here, drag across there, and has joined those into a single plane. All right, and same thing here. We got a roof. Same thing here. We can drag across all of those, and we have a roof plane. And so we can do a whole bunch of these buildings this way. All right. So now I've got the roof done. Maybe I want some of the wall planes to be a different shade of green. And so I'll open up my fill here, and maybe it's a paler one for the west face. Do that, and so this is something that we might have to do independently, because it's Illustrator's not detecting a difference there in that plane. We might have to come back and fix that one. All right. So we can go through and do all of this way. And finally, maybe the south face is even something else. Again, that's a little kind of an error. And it's a little hard to see, but those should be all turning to this very pale green now. And if we want to just make sure that we can actually see it, let's do it again. Make sure that it's actually working. Because we can always come back and select these planes by color and alter them. And again, we can always change this, and as long as I think that you make these colors distinct, it'll make it easy to select them later and edit them. For example, if we actually don't, if we want to change the color of all these south faces, I can just select one of those and then come up to select menu and say same fill color. And now it has selected all of those objects with that same green, and we can change them in various ways. We can change them with the color slider, right, to something else. We can change it with a swatch, which I don't have any loaded here in this file, but we can load them up and say swatches, and we can say open swatch for library. We'll open up the default swatches here. And so for the that color instead, maybe we want something like that. All right. So there's a way that we can, now that we've identified them with a unique color, those planes, we can select them by that unique color and change them to whatever we want. These are selected as not shape builder objects now, but individual paths, filled paths, so we can change the stroke color as well and the stroke width. So if I hit X, again to quickly go to the stroke foreground there, we can change the stroke color to, and we can just make it something wild here again, something distinctive, and we can change the stroke width independently here. Those items, something very bold like that, right? Or not. Here, we can do the same thing here. Select, same fill color, change to our fill color here. And maybe this is also, now we actually do want this to be more sort of this orangey color. That's what we have going on, right? Stroke color. We want that purpley or maroony kind of color again, or whatever we want, as well as the stroke width. Right. Just as an example. Right. Okay. So then you would go about doing all of the buildings. And if we have to do things manually using the pen tool, or we can do that along with the Pathfinder. If we want to fix things like this, we can use the draw some new elements and use the shape builder tool to fix them. So I'm going to use the line tool and the backslash key is the shortcut, and click and drag. We'll go there and do the same thing here. We'll click and drag from that anchor point to that anchor point. And now if we select through here all those items and use the shape builder tool, and let's do this gray again. There, now it has mostly identified. I think there are still some gaps through here, but you can see that that's one way of being able to isolate some of these planes, is just simply draw some new lines. And that should help the shape builder. So don't let my choices of colors here influence you. Everyone, please, like I mentioned in the 2D vicinity tutorial, you should come up with a color palette that makes sense, that's cohesive, that works with the brand, and all the diagrams should have a commonality in color and appearance. To get the ellipse tool and draw some circles here. Right, and we have to size these appropriate to the diagram as well. Let's change the color here. No stroke. And let's just do a no stroke. And let's do a color that represents a nice warm sun, something a nice golden yellow there. Right, and move this into place. That represents the noontime sun here on each of the 3 arcs. And then we can do what would represent the sunrise, which is a little bit warmer typically, so we can change the color there, something like that. And now you see as I'm kind of, they're kind of bunching up, right? So that's where finding the proper angle for the view that also is able to capture the angle of the solar arcs here and make it as clear as you can is a little important. So the afternoon sun's typically a little cooler, right? So we're orange like that, and so there we go. So there's a way to diagram how the sun moves through the sky and its relationship to the geography of our site. I'll lock the solar arcs layer, turn on the view cones, and go ahead and select them all, and begin to move those into place. And so we've got some conflicts between the solar arcs and the view cones. So this might also just suggest that you need more than one diagram. You might need two similar diagrams of the same view to communicate all of the material, all of the information clearly. I'll zoom in here a little bit. I'll go ahead and turn, or maybe what we can do is I'll move the solar arcs out of the way, and maybe we can manipulate those and find a new home for those at some point. Let's move them out of the way for now. And let's work on the view cones. All right. So this is kind of where we left off when we exported these from Rhino. So simply what we can do is go and find some images that represent the view in each of these directions. So let's try and go back to Google Earth and take a view here up toward Malibu. And let's move over a little bit. There you go. And all right. And there is a way to turn off. There's a way to turn off in Google Earth all of those annotations and things that like this. So I think it would be good to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a screenshot here. All right, very simply, just something like that. Try not to get any of those labels. And that's been put on my desktop. And it imports it. Let's go back to Illustrator. I'll zoom out a little bit. So it's really big, of course, because it's a high-res capture. We'll scale this down holding the Shift key to keep it proportional so it doesn't distort, although we will distort it here in the end. And let's zoom in here through our view cone where we're going to put it. We're going to put it on basically this picture plane. And let's turn off everything else, solar arcs, let's turn off the section cut and the base drawing here. And we can even move this out of the way a little bit so we have breathing room for everything. All right, so in order to align these, line up the image with that parallelogram, what I can do is I can align it to basically that point and kind of resize and reshape it. First of all, if you recall, I made this a group. And when this is a group, when I use the black arrow, it selects the whole thing. And what I want to do is, since I want to align it to that point, it's the end point of this segment here, and I can get to that with the white arrow, and so that would select just that that one item. So that's the trick that we're going to use to align something to just part of a group. I'm going to use the black arrow to select the image. Then I'll switch to the white arrow, shift select that line, so I have the whole image and just that line selected now. And I'll use the align palette here to line these up to the right side. So what it'll do is when I click this, it'll bring this leftmost thing over to the rightmost one, like that. And then when I do this, align vertical align bottom, it'll align the upper thing to the bottom of the bottom one, like that. Okay, let's shift back to the black arrow and resize this some more so it fits there. And when I pull this over, you see that it kind of snaps and gives me the guide. All right. Whoops. And I didn't want to resize that line behind there. So let me do that again. So I had that still selected when I started dragging this. All right. So there we go. And now to distort this, I can use the free transform tool. There are a couple of tools we can use. There's a shear tool as well. But let's use the free transform tool. So that's E is the shortcut. Zoom in here a little bit. Okay. So what I can do is I can just grab this edge and pull it down. I'm holding shift to constrain it in one direction. And there we go, like that. Okay, zoom out a little bit. And then I can also, if I right click this image, I can say arrange send to back. All right, so now the cone of the pyramid is in front. Then to resize the view cone, I want to move this point and that point, or I should say there are 3 points here. 3 line segments come together. 3 line segments come together. I'll use the white arrow, draw a box around those to select all of those endpoints. Do the same thing here. I'll shift select those. So I've got endpoints here and endpoints here. 3 endpoints, 3 endpoints. Now I'll just drag this and pull down until I match the image. Okay. The view cone is still a little kind of flattened now, right? So it's a little hard to understand what's going on. So let's resize it. I'll use the white arrow to select those endpoints. Kind of pull this out. And this might help now is if we turn on the drawing again, so we kind of get the proper angle that we want to do this, right? So maybe something like that. Okay, I'll go back to the black arrow. Now I can select all those things together and kind of put it back into place where we need it. And now that this whole thing is constructed, I can group it, right? And so if I just click here, it selects everything, and I can resize them all at once with the black arrow if I want, right? So that's the way to indicate a view cone here in Illustrator. Bring in an image, resize it, distort it, have it match your view cone. And with the view cone here, we can change the stroke color, the stroke width, all that stuff that we've looked at before. Okay, so some other things we can do is add some markers for some activity. Say, for example, in this, we want to indicate pedestrian activity, or say maybe this is a noisy intersection, and we can want to show the intensity of the noise here. Something we can do is put a kind of marker or another graphical annotation. I'm going to turn off the view cones now to just get them out of the way. Keep everything else locked, and I'll make a new layer. And let's just call this right now, we call this markers. And I'll put it on the very top. Let me turn off the view cones again. Okay, so I'm on layer markers, and so something like, we can use an ellipse here, L, to indicate a circular intensity here. And to get the gradient, what you can do is select that. Here's the gradient tool, G. Double click it. It opens up this control palette. And before I continue, I know that I don't have any swatches here, so let's do this. Let's open the default swatches. And the reason we don't have any swatches in this file is because I didn't use an Illustrator template. I didn't tell Illustrator to create a new blank file. I opened up our Rhino export Illustrator file as the working one, and so that came in with few colors or no swatches saved in it. So open up this default art and illustration swatches. And so what I can do here is insert or change these colors just by dragging and dropping. All right, like that. And so we've got a circular form here, circular gradient, and then we can change the opacity, something like that. Let's undo that. Let's do this side, the opacity, so it kind of blurs away. Right? And then let's go back to our black arrow and turn off the stroke. And so there, we've got some indication of an intensity of something where it's intense at the intersection, and it tapers off as we get to the edge. And we can make this, I'm holding down Option and Shift to resize this around its center. Option, if I don't hold down Option, it goes from corner to corner. If I hold Option, it resizes it around the center of the object. That's a little intense, so we can go to our transparency and actually make the whole thing a little bit transparent. Or maybe let's go back to the gradient here. Let's select that and select that, and maybe it's more like that. All right, zoom out a little bit. It could be a little big, it could be a little too prominent. All right. Okay, but that's how to insert a radial gradient on an object. Flags, we can put in other kinds of markers and text as we see fit. And then one last thing is just to sort of complete the diagram so that we read the profile here. Move the solar arcs out of the way. Here. Again, this is turned into something a little problematic, the solar arc. So that's going to have to be something that you guys think about. What is the best angle for the view? What is the best location in the diagram for the solar arcs? And I'm just going to make a new layer again, and it's going to go under everything. And I'll just call this Poche. So this will be, what I'll do is use the pen tool and just click and kind of trace this down here, there, and close it like that. Go back to the black arrow, no stroke, and let's give it a, what we can do is give it some dark Poche color, and there. So it's a little bit of a mess, you know. This is just a tutorial to show you techniques to use to get going on this, to get started. If I had to do this all over again, one of the first things I would do is maybe reconsider the view again. I think maybe something a little bit more from the top might be appropriate in this case. I think that the again, the solar arcs are giving a little difficulty here, but I think that this gives you a start on a lot of the techniques that you can use just to get from Rhino 3D into Illustrator to start getting, a very graphic representation in a diagram. All right.